Australia is at war. After 3 years of fighting Germany and its allies, it is now threatened by a new enemy, Japan.
I've had it. We've been walking for days.
When do you reckon the AIF are getting here?
Soon.
Go, 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 go! Heads down!
They're gone. No one's here.
Hello and welcome to Ask a Reporter for another week. I haven't been here for a while.
No, neither have I. It's kind of a nice
Been a
surprise
while.
to be back. I'm not really surprised. I knew I was coming.
It's like coming home. Did you just see that? That's Kokoda VR.
Kokoda VR, the trailer for Kokoda VR. That's what we've spent a lot of this year working on, or at least I definitely have. So I haven't been on VTN very much, but got the awesome opportunity to be a part of Kokoda VR. So
It's pretty cool.
talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about today. A little bit about Kokoda, a bit about VR. So if you have any questions, please feel free to go to our website and lodge them there. I will get them and I'll be able to ask Matt, or I'll be able to ask them myself.
Yeah.
To myself. It's a bit weird if I ask myself questions, isn't it?
You can ask me and then I'll be like, actually, that's for you, Nathan.
That's for me
so
to
we'll
do.
a bit of that back and forth. always
Back and
fun.
forth stuff. Okay with that? Okay, let's jump into it.
Yeah.
We've got heaps of questions, so let's go for it. First question, and I feel this is a good general one to start with.
Yeah.
Why is it important for kids to know about Kokoda? And that's from Our Lady of the Pines. Thank you.
That's a really good question. So, telling the story of Kokoda was definitely a really important one for us, because we definitely think it's something that kids in all Australia should really know about, because it was seen as one of the first times Australians had fought in a war for themselves and to protect their country. So that was a big kind of first. And the men who ended up over in Papua New Guinea fighting there did so in some pretty terrible, harsh conditions and with not a lot of support and help that they really needed, and yet they somehow found a way to get through it and survive and make the best of a really tough situation. So it's a really important story for us about Australia and Australians, so I wanted to share that with you guys.
Yeah, it's also really hard to learn about wartime things by reading a textbook. If you've ever tried to read a book basically about a military conflict, there's a lot of dates, and it's really hard to picture what actually happened and the locations it happened in. And so that's where VR is really good, is it lets you stand in those locations and actually see what was happening with your own eyes, and let you turn around and even interact with what's there. So that's why we did it.
Yeah.
Next question from Mark Oliphant College. How hard is it to make a VR game?
Wow,
Where would you put that?
That's a really good question, and you know
Pretty
what?
hard.
Yeah, pretty hard. We went into this knowing not that much really about VR, so we had an idea of how this could work and what it would look like, but we learned so much along the way about how we could make it realistic and how we could make it interactive and how also to make it educational. So we had some ideas, but we had to learn a lot along the way, and even now there's still so many things we'd like to add and improve and make better, because you just learn so much and you want to add so much to it. But it's been a year-long process basically, so we've had a whole year working on this to make what amounts to about a 40-minute experience, so kind of like a documentary style, but this is essentially a virtual reality game. So it's been a big one. It's been tough. I'd say if you want to do it, you're going to have to spend a lot of time and energy and effort to make it happen, but we really feel happy and privileged to be able to do it and share it with you guys. It's been pretty awesome.
Absolutely. There are a lot of people that actually share their knowledge because it's a new area. There's a lot of people that share their knowledge, even just on the internet, on YouTube. There's lots of tutorials on how you can start making your own VR games and experiences. So if you did want to get involved, there are ways to do it just from your own bedroom, which are pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question from Mark Oliphant College. What would happen if you made a mistake in a VR game?
What would happen if
How
you made
can
a
you
mistake?
fix a mistake?
Like if you're...
We haven't, thankfully.
Yeah,
that we
like
know
if
of
you're
yet.
if you're making the game, if you made a mistake, like you could just be well, you think you're sitting there, something's about to happen, and then everything goes black and your game crashes. That would be a terrible
would be
example of
bad.
a mistake. Or if you're playing it from the other perspective, you're just like, oh, this is interesting. You go to pick something up and you could just
Drop it.
fall over or bump into a chair because you haven't set up your area
Oh.
properly. So either way, there are definitely mistakes to be made on both sides.
Yeah.
But a large part of putting together this project in virtual reality is essentially a game has meant we've had to put lots of people through the experience and kind of bug test it and make sure that the game doesn't crash or it's easy to use and the instructions make sense. And so we had to tweak and change those things as we went along. So it's definitely a situation where you need the input of lots of people to make sure it works.
That's the great thing about the difference between doing something like VR and doing something like BTN that we normally do is that when you put BTN out, it goes to the TV station and then it goes out all over Australia and you can't fix it from there. It's done, it's out there. Whereas for VR, the good thing is if there is something in there that was causing problems, you can do updates. So you can send an update, so everyone that has that computer program, that software, will get the update and it'll be fixed. So it is actually kind of cool in that way too. So that's something we had to, get to come to grips with while we were changing from doing video stuff for VR, for BTN, over to VR.
Absolutely.
Next question from WPS. Where can you get Kokoda VR? Do you want me to fill that one in?
Yeah, you should do that one.
Okay, so there's a few different options if you want to see Kokoda VR. If you have a really, really good VR headset at school or at home, they're called HTC Vives. And if you've got one, then perfect. You can download it for free from the Steam software store. So set up an account and download it from there. If you have a mobile device, either an Android or an iOS device, then you can download an app for there for free from the App Store and put it into a little cardboard headset or any of those plastic ones you can get for a few dollars, and then you can see an experience. It's not quite the same. You can't pick up things, you can't interact as much, but it's still pretty cool. The other option is if you just want to have a bit of a look around on your computer or on your phone or your tablet, you can go to YouTube and look up the 360 videos on the BTN YouTube channel. So they're all there in order, all the chapters, so you can see it. So no matter what you have at home, you'll be able to see it some way or another.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're on Wi-Fi when you either look at the YouTube videos or download the app, because they're quite big.
They're pretty big.
They're pretty big, so Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, you can head to our website for information about where you can actually access them. You can see it on the screen right in front of you here.
Oh, look, it says.
Yeah.
Oh, Kokoda VR, there's a little thing.
Yeah.
Wait, oh, my
That's
thumb's
quite
in the way.
good.
Oh, wait.
So if you do that, and there'll be some more information about the project there as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's
I'm done
good.
with that now.
I like that.
That was fun. Isn't that funny? We made a VR thing, but we're really excited about words on a screen.
It's the little things in life. Nathan.
It is. Okay, next question.
Yes.
From Mark Oliphant College. How does it feel to make the thing? How does it feel to make this game?
Feels really good. It feels amazing to have finally got there, because we started with just basically a vague idea of how we were going to do it and what it was going to look like. To see it come all the way from that original idea to a completed VR experience is really cool. So one of the first things we had to do was, we knew because we wanted to make Kokoda VR as realistic as possible, we had to go to PNG and we had to film along the track itself. So that meant planning where we were going to go, understanding what locations were there and what we could capture in them, getting all of those and finding a good way to turn those into really realistic 3D objects and environments. So that was a really tough initial bit, and once we had that, it was then much easier to throw in our animations and other bits of information and script and characters to really bring it to life. But it's been a pretty big process, so it's really good to see it in the state it is now, where people can actually see it and enjoy it and understand really what we've been talking about, because a lot of the time you get a few blank looks like, what's going on here? What is it you're actually trying to do? Because it's something that people haven't really done very much before, making an educational virtual reality experience.
Yeah, it's good. It's exciting to work on something new, to do something different, which is good. It's a good feeling. Next question from Mark Oliphant College. What would happen if you weren't paying attention and you fell over on your face while you're in VR?
It's a good question. The answer would be it would hurt, unless you have like a really soft, lush carpet underneath you.
Padded room.
Yeah.
That would be good handy.
Yeah. So my advice would be to be careful. Also, make sure you've set up your space before you put on your headset, so you can't potentially fall over or hurt yourself.
Ideally, have a friend. Maybe,
Ideally,
just to make
have
sure
a friend. Yeah. So if you're using the HTC Vive, there are a lot of cords and stuff. That's always got to be careful not to trip over those. So be careful, be safe. You'll have fun.
Absolutely. Ballast North Primary School can use the guns in Kokoda VR.
You can't fire the guns in Kokoda VR. That's not really what Kokoda VR is about. It's very much about like learning more about the objects themselves and finding out about the story. But you can pick some of them up and get a close look at them, and they came from real life guns that we photographed and turned into 3D models. So they're accurate representations. So it should give you a good idea of how things looked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to do that too, if you can use the full interactivity version.
Yeah.
The next question. Is the Kokoda track good for children? Why or why not? From Jura Public School.
Yeah.
Do you think the Kokoda track should be done by children or walked by children?
Look, I think it would be an amazing experience to do. So, if you've watched the making of story about Kokoda VR, you'll know that we flew in on a helicopter and we went to a lot of the key locations over a single day. So we kind of cheated and skipped a lot of the hard walking bits to get to see some of the
Pretty much all the hard walking.
Pretty much all the hard walking bits to see some of those iconic spots. But I think doing the trek itself would be amazing and really tough. But also it's such a beautiful location. So even without that historical background to it, it would still be really cool and interesting to walk. So there's lots of different things you can get out of that experience. I'm pretty sure like there are lots of different tour operators that do treks for people of varying age groups. So you have a lot of schools that go along, and you have some older groups as well. So it's definitely one where you have to be fit and prepared and probably spend a bit of time training for. But there's no reason that the kids can't do it.
Yep, very true. And then more and more are doing it, although mainly high schoolers, but more and more are doing it each year, which is interesting. Why did we send untrained people to Kokoda during the war?
Yeah,
What's that about? That's from Jura Public School?
It is a really good question. So a large part of understanding why that happened is realizing that the war, World War II, had already gone on for a couple of years already. So up to this point, Australia had been fighting off in the Middle East and Africa, and all of its or most of its experienced trained troops were there. So fighting Germany and its allies at the time. And it wasn't until at the end of 1941 that Japan entered the war, and then Australia quickly realised that there was a potential for a serious threat to Australia here, and it meant at the time they didn't have a whole heap of options in terms of protecting Australia, and they knew that New Guinea was an area that needed protecting, and so it sent soldiers off there. But those soldiers were militia troops. So militia meant basically they were home guard. They were a lot of the time they were either really old or really quite young, not experienced, had varying levels of training. And then so because they were around, they were the ones who were sent off there. So initially that's what happened. So in the first fighting along the Kokoda track, it was those more inexperienced soldiers who ended up fighting there. But as the Kokoda campaign progressed, and experienced soldiers, the Australian Imperial Force came home and were then sent off there. They arrived on the track to help out some of the militiamen who'd been doing it tough on the track for a while.
Next question's from Linnea, from Year 3 CEPS. How long is the Kokoda Trail walk?
Yeah, so
long.
It's pretty long and it's pretty tough. So it stretches 96 k's, and it takes about 8 days to do it. So, and depending on if you were to do it yourself, which tour operator or which exact path you took, those or how long it took you basically might vary a day or two in either direction, but about 8 days. So it's a bit of a tough one, and a lot of people have to train quite hard to do it. There's some really rigorous, tough up and down bits. It can be really slippery, so you need good shoes. and there's not a lot of support really if things go wrong. So obviously there are trained people there on the ground who can look out for you, and there are probably medical staff and stuff, but a lot of the time if people get in trouble, they have to be choppered out from some of the main villages along the way.
Next question is, does the Kokoda VR have an age restriction, or is it suitable for all ages? I'll take that one. So basically, we tried to make Kokoda VR as accessible as possible for as many kids as possible. For the headset version, where you put on a headset and you're actually sort of in there looking around, we really recommend about 11 and over use it. And just because there are some battle scenes where, you know, there's nothing violent in there or anything like that that you can see right in front of you, but it is quite scary still, because you're in amongst what we tried to recreate was a small section of battle, and so we recommend that 11 and plus use it, but there is the YouTube 360 version where you can kind of have a look on your desktop, and that's probably more appropriate for kids under 11 as well. So if you want to have a look, there's nothing inappropriate in there, so you can have a look, but for the full headset version where you're putting it on and going into it, then we recommend 11 plus.
Yeah.
But please have a look, or at least have a look at the trailer. You can get a feeling for what it's like. And there's lots of...
We can show a brief clip now.
Oh yes, we can. Let's show a brief clip now. Or now.
Or just in a couple of seconds.
Or now. There you go. So this is one of the battle scenes that you can see here. So as you can see, it's not too scary when you're looking at it just like this. But when you're actually in the headset, you're actually watching this happen, it can be quite scary because the sounds are all around you, and you really get a bit of a sense for what it would be like being some of those soldiers and not knowing what was happening. So that's why we wanted to make it like that. And as you can see there, we have little videos that pop up and tell you more about what's happening. Matt, do you want to explain what we're learning there?
Yeah, so at this stage, if you have the headset on, you're kind of hearing a lot of explosions around you and things that are happening. So this is explaining that the Japanese had a pretty big advantage when it came to weaponry in this part of the campaign. So they had mortars and different pieces of artillery that they find, so it did a lot more damage, and the Australians were really outgunned and also outnumbered here. So that's what this video is explaining, and what this battle scene is trying to get across.
Very cool. Emma wants to know, what do you need to create VR?
That's a really good question. What do you need to create?
Really?
Yeah.
Basically, just an idea.
Can you tell us what this started as, Nathan? Because this was your brainchild.
Yeah, so Kokoda VR started, we had a very simple idea of what we wanted to do, and it was just going to be going over there, filming in 360-degree video, so video that goes all around you, up, down, around, the floor, the sky, everything, filming those locations in 360-degree video, and putting up some information that told you what happened in each location. So it was really, really simple. As we went along and we found out more about some of what the technology would allow us to do, but also the kind of story we wanted to tell, because we wanted to give you a full picture of what happened. We wanted to be able to integrate some of the first-hand accounts from some of the veterans as well. And so once we started bringing all those other elements together, we realized that we needed to do something a little bit more involved. And so that's why we added the animated characters, and we made those scenes areas that you can actually stand in and look around trees and experience them like you're really there. So it felt more real. And so that's how we kind of, made it more complicated over time. If you wanted to do a VR experience, really all you need is an idea and some way of getting those images onto the screen. So there are a lot of places where you can get free 3D images that you could put into a virtual world just with a bit of software that is very, very cheap. And you can learn to use that through tutorials on the internet, and you can start making your own VR experience just in that way. So if you have a very simple idea but it's a very good idea, then you can start right now.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend that if that's something you're interested in doing, because there's so much information available on the internet, and in situations like this where it's still like a relatively new technology in a new field, lots of people are also experimenting and happy to help you out and give you ideas and suggestions for how you can do things, and just generally make that a bit easier for you. So if you've got a really cool idea, go for it.
Yeah. Next question from Michaela: how much does VR cost? Now I'm assuming from this you're talking about how much do the headsets and things like that cost. So just to give you a rough idea, for the high-end kind of headset that we were talking about before, it's about $500 to $600 for the headset, and then you need a really powerful computer to run that headset. So that's probably about maybe 1,500 or so
Yeah.
to run that. So it can be quite expensive. If you want to go for mobile VR, all you need is a mobile phone, a fairly new one, and they have little cardboard headsets, and they only cost a few dollars. So it is a lot cheaper, especially if you already have a mobile, to do it that way. But if you want to have the really involved experiences where you have controllers and you interact and you can do things and move around in the space, then you need to spend that extra bit of money.
Yeah. But as VR kind of becomes a bit more common, hopefully we'll see some of the prices of those more expensive headsets drop and become a lot more accessible. But as it is now, it's pretty great that we have these cheaper options that you can use on your phone to still get a lot of those same experiences.
Now, this one is from Blake from Dural Public School, and he wants to know, and I know you've mentioned this before, but I don't know whether you know it off the top of your head, so tell me if you don't.
Yeah.
What's the fastest time you've heard of anyone going through the Kokoda track?
That's a really good question. So, this is definitely one of those ones where if you have a bit of a search on Google, you'll find a few different answers for. I'm pretty sure the fastest time is a little bit under 18 hours to do the whole thing.
Wow.
Which is pretty incredible given how far it is and how long it normally takes most people. So, wow, well under a day, and that time has kind of got a lot faster over time as more and more people have been like, yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to beat this record. So it's pretty crazy. One of the things that makes it crazy to me isn't just the sheer length of it. It's the slipperiness and the up and down nature of it, and the thick bits you've got of jungle and long grass, and you've got such a combination of different environmental factors that would make it really tricky. So tough one, but yeah, I think under 18 hours is the record, but have a Google. You'll see if there have been a few different records over time for that one.
And I suppose it depends where you measure it from and to and things like that. There are slightly different tracks in certain areas, so yeah, but that's a big effort.
Huge effort.
Oh. Does it cost to go on the Kokoda track? Is there an entrance fee?
Yeah, so most of the time the people doing the track are doing it with tour operators, so that's something that I guess you would then pay them to take you as part of your trekking experience. But there is a fee that's paid to the Kokoda Track Authority, which is involved in maintaining and looking after the track. So there are some fees involved, and there's a bit of a cost in getting over to PNG in the first place and kind of getting everything you need. And because a lot of the time you're going through areas of land that people own, sometimes you have to pay them money to access parts of their land and walk through and that kind of thing. So there are some costs involved, but most of the time that's going to be organised by tour operators or other people who are there helping you out.
Cool. JM wants to know what countries were part of the battle.
Yeah. So it's a good question. So the Kokoda campaign is one where Australia was the primary country involved. So the US came along a little bit later after Kokoda was retaken in November, at least in terms of the land battle specifically. And then so Australia was fighting Japan in that battle. Also, the local Papuan people had a really big role to play. So as you would have heard in the story, in the making of, and even if you've had a chance to go through the Kokoda VR experience yourself, Papuan people were really important in acting as porters, as carrying things, supplies especially, and helping wounded men back over the track. So they played a big role there. There's also the Papuan Infantry Battalion, and the ANGAU, who were the a government organisation who also went around. There are a few different Papuan organisations and Papuan men who helped out. So those are the three main countries, I guess, of different people involved. So a little bit later, the Americans were involved, basically in the Punagona campaign, so fighting on land against the Japanese there.
Aura wants to know from Dural Public School, why was it so important for the Japanese to get to Port Moresby?
Yeah, so it was a big deal for Japan to take Port Moresby so they could control the area basically and make it harder for Australia to support America. So by taking Port Moresby, it would have made it much more difficult for Australia to work closely with America in terms of maintaining access by sea and by air.
JM also wants to know, how hard is it to walk the Kokoda track in your opinion?
Look, in my opinion, I
you seen
haven't
it?
done it. I have to keep reiterating that I haven't actually done it. Did the helicopter thing, and so the walking that I did do on the track was pretty minimal. It'd be for like an hour or so at a time when we were just getting to good shooting locations. And I found even that was pretty hard, and it takes a lot out of you. So I can't really compare that at all to people who are actually doing it, let alone what the soldiers themselves experience going through the Kokoda track themselves. So I'd say it's definitely a tough one, and you'd have to train and work hard if you wanted to do it yourself.
Now, Piper and Jazz have a good question. They said there's argument about whether it's a trail or a track. Is there an answer there, or is it something just that we call it both?
Look, I would say at this point in time, it gets used interchangeably. We've said track a fair bit in the VR experience, but you'll see trail as well. I don't think there's a definitive answer. Both of them seem to get used a fair bit. So I guess that's your answer, really.
Cool, just getting some special notes here. Next question.
These questions have
I
been
had
really great,
here.
by the way. Good variation of
Very,
things about
very good
the
questions.
VR experience themselves, and some good history stuff. So thanks, guys. Well done.
Sorry, I just lost my place, and so you can fill while I'm finding where I was up to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just so you know.
Yeah, so so Nathan's going to find a couple more questions to read through. So we're just a day or so out from our official launch we've done for Kokoda VR now. So if you guys have the opportunity to do it, now is definitely the time. So if you've got access to an HTC Vive headset, you can download that for free from the Steam store, and give it a go, and let us know what you think. So we're really keen to hear from you guys and get some more feedback about it. And if that's out of the question, you don't have access to it, it's also available in the Apple Store, so that's a good option as well. And you can use in a Google Cardboard or something similar, like just a cheap kind of headset. And even the 360-degree videos themselves are on YouTube are a good option. So either way, you're still going to get a heap of good information. There's some good educational stuff in there, and you can kind of see a lot of those real objects that we've spent a lot of time kind of gathering and talking about. So that's one of the things that I think is really cool about this project, is that we spent a lot of time getting real artifacts from the 1940s to put into the experience. So using that photogrammetry technique of taking a lot of photos and then turning them into 3D models has meant so many of the things that you see in there are actually realistic and true to how they were. So regardless of the type of experience you can have, whether it's the headset or just looking at it on a computer, you can still see some of those things in pretty interesting detail. So
Yeah, and we'd really like to give you more of these over time too, so it's not just this story we tell you, it's lots of other Australian stories as well, because it's a really fun way to learn. And the great thing about it is you get to be involved. You actually get to participate in the history lesson or whatever lesson that you're doing in VR or augmented reality, which is adding something to your world around you. So you could sit there and have a look at some of the artifacts, say, from World War II, from the Kokoda campaign. You could see them in your classroom and have a look at them with your phones. And so all of those technologies are really good for helping learning be as fun as possible, but still helping you remember what you've learned.
Yeah.
So we'd love to do more of this in the future, which is really cool. I've got some more questions here, and then we'll have to wrap up because we are running out of time.
Yep.
But Jasmine wants to know, was this the toughest conditions for the soldiers our soldiers that they ever faced?
yeah, so definitely tough conditions for a lot of them. And one of the things that made it so hard wasn't just the environment and the climate themselves, it was also the fact that because of how difficult the area was to access, it meant getting supplies was difficult, and they often ran low on ammunition and stuff like that as well. So it was really hard from that perspective. And because of a lot of the first soldiers who fought on the Kokoda track, like the 39th Battalion and 53rd, who were militia, essentially hadn't come in quite as trained and experienced as some of the other Australian troops had already been fighting for a couple of years. That was a much bigger shock to their systems as well, because they hadn't come from that hard and constant fighting experience. So it was really tough for a number of reasons. So it was tricky. I'm not going to say it was the toughest, but definitely some of the like a huge range of tough, difficult things that made this campaign really difficult for a lot of people in lots of different ways.
Yeah. And last question from Hannah from Dural Public School. Would you say that the Kokoda track is now becoming a tourist attraction, and why?
Yeah, so it definitely in the last few years especially, the Kokoda track has become a pretty big thing for lots of people to do and experience, and lots of Australians especially. So in some ways it is a bit of a tourist location. People come there to be there and experience it and see where men fought and died and understand a bit more about our Australian history. And that's a huge reason why we wanted to bring Kokoda VR to you guys, because it's an important Australian story that we think you should know about.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Nathan.
And thank you for your time, and thank you for supporting Kokoda VR. We hope that you'll go and download it and have a look, and let us know what you think. You can let us know on the website, or you can leave a review, whatever it is. Let us know what you think, and thank you very much for supporting it. So thank you, and thanks for all your questions today too. Thanks, very
guys.
good. Next week, Ruby will be in the hot seat, and we'll be talking about flu season. If you've got any flu questions, we've just come out of flu season, and apparently it was one of the worst for a very long time, and we're going to tell you why next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then,
See you
bye.
guys.